Okay, so substitutes. We have rules about substitutes. So Taco Bell, Cafe Rio, Del Taco, and Chipotle are substitutes. I have friends who think that there is no substitute for Chipotle, that none of these other things work. They are substitutes. They aren't necessarily great substitutes. There's reasons why you pick one over the other, but they're substitutes. Okay? If the price of substitute X rises, the demand for good Y rises. What's that mean? Taco Bell raises their prices, the demand for Del Taco goes up. United Airlines raises their prices, the demand for Southwest Airlines goes up. The price of Fords goes up, the demand for Chevys will go up. Okay? The price of one thing, if the price of one thing going up causes the demand for something else to go up, those things are substitutes. If the price of strawberries goes up, people are going to buy more blueberries. Those things are substitutes. Okay? And again, this is personal choice. You might be a person that always likes to eat strawberries and blueberries together. And if the price of strawberries goes up, maybe you don't buy any blueberries so it's personal preference. If you don't think that Del Taco is a substitute for Chipotle, if the price of Chipotle goes up, your demand for Del Taco might not change at all because you don't think they're substitutes. Okay? Got that? All right. Complements. Complements are things that go together. So, Skippy peanut butter and grape jelly, those two things are complements. And I could have thrown a loaf of bread or something in there. Those are things that we buy together, that go together. The airplane ticket and the hotel room, those things are complements. They go together. Okay? If the price of complement X rises, if the price of Skippy rises, or the price of that airline ticket rises, the demand for the other thing falls. So if the price of Skippy goes up, we're going to buy less peanut butter. That means we're also going to buy less jelly. If the price of airline tickets goes up, we're going to buy fewer airline tickets, which means we're also going to buy fewer hotel rooms. If the price of the complement X rises, the demand for the good Y falls. Okay? So complements and substitutes kind of opposites of the other. Okay? So, income. Income. There are two classifications of goods with regard to income. Most goods, probably most goods, are what we call normal goods. And that means as income goes up, we buy more of them. So we buy more Ferraris as income goes up. And we buy more fancy restaurant meals as our income goes up. Okay? Those are normal goods. We buy more of them as our income rises. The demand for expensive cars increases as our incomes rise. There are other goods that are inferior goods. I think that's a bad word, and I don't know what the better word is, but that's a bad word, but that's what we call them. Inferior doesn't mean they're low quality or they're bad. It just means we buy less of them as our income rises. So Honda Civics are probably inferior goods. Rich people don't buy a lot of Honda Civics. It's a starter car, right? And as your income goes up, then you think, hey, I'm going to buy a SUV or something else, right? You start with the Civic. So the Civic might be an inferior good, again, not because it's a bad car. There's nothing bad about it. But we tend to buy fewer of them as our income rises. Kraft macaroni and cheese, I don't eat that stuff. So maybe it is an inferior good, but I guarantee you that, billionaires are not sending their chauffeur out to the grocery store to buy a box of mac and cheese with the powdered cheese in it. Okay? As your income rises, you buy less ramen noodles and less mac and cheese in boxes. And okay, it turns out that rich people will eat more rice and less potatoes. Okay? Some goods we buy less of as our income rises, and those are inferior goods. A lot of goods we buy more of as our income rises, and those are normal goods. Population should be obvious. The more people there are, There's more demand. More cars get sold in Las Vegas today than got sold in Las Vegas 40 years ago because there's more people in Las Vegas today than there's. Okay? More. Preferences. We buy things we like, even if we didn't know we liked it. And my favorite example of all this is still the pet rock. So this guy had this idea, and he made these little boxes that had air holes in them, and he put straw in them, and he put a rock in them, a real rock, and then he put instructions for the rock. So, for example, the instructions would you could teach your rock to play dead. You could just take it out of the box and put it on the table and go, hey, play dead. And the rock would play dead very effectively all day long. Okay? This was the best-selling Christmas present one year in the whole United States. This was the hottest Christmas present, was the pet rock. Preferences. If we look at basketball players in the 60s, they were wearing really short shorts and knee socks. Today's basketball players do not wear really short shorts and knee socks. Preferences have changed. If you try to sell really short shorts and knee socks to people, you're not going to sell a lot of them. Today you have to sell longer shorts, more invisible kind of socks. We have our preferences of what we wear. If you look at college students in the 50s dressed up to go to school. The guys are wearing dress shirts and ties to go to college. Not very many people wear dress shirts and ties to go to college nowadays, and most of them do it because they're going to go to work right after their classes and they don't have time to change. Okay? So part of what happens in demand is people's preferences about things. Economists are not really good at dealing with this. This is more why you take marketing class, to figure out how people create their preferences and what they do. But it's a very important thing in supply and demand, that curve moves around all the time because people's preferences have changed, and we don't really know how to make sensible sense out of it, maybe. Anyway. Okay. So I draw a whole family of demand curves here for you. A whole family of them. A blue one and a red one and a purple one. Yes? Which I cleverly call D1, D2, and D3. Okay? So let's look at the blue line, the red line, and the purple line and say which of these lines is the biggest demand and which of these lines is the littlest demand. So let's pick a price here. Let's call this price P. At the price P, what quantity do I buy? Well, at A, I buy that quantity. At B, I buy that quantity. And at C, I buy that quantity, right? So the demand curve with the blue line is the lowest demand curve. The demand curve of the purple line, D3, is the highest demand curve. And then the red curve is in between, D2. Okay? So demand is increasing as it moves to the right on our screen. As it moves to the right, demand is increasing. So as I go from A to B and B to C, demand is increasing. From A to E, the quantity demanded increased. Let me say that again. From A to B or B to C, demand is increasing. The curve is changing. A to E, the quantity demanded has changed. The curve didn't change. We changed our spot on the curve. All right. So what can make us move? Let's suppose we're at A and we want to go to B. What can get us to B? Well, number one, an increase in the price of a substitute would get us to B. A decrease in the price of a complement would get us to B. An increase in our income if the good for this graph is a normal good, or a decrease in our income if this graph is for an inferior good. More people could get us from A to B, and a change in preferences. So maybe we advertise our product and it becomes more popular, and that gets us from A to B. How do I get from A to E? I lower the price. Whatever it is I'm selling, I lower the price. That gets me from A to E. Everything else that happens is going to move me from A to B or B to C or C to B, somewhere else around, change the curve. But lowering the price gets me from A to E. We got that? So change in demand, it happens because of that list of things. Change in demand, it happens because of that list of things. Change in the quantity demanded happens because the price changed. Okay. Supply. So, where does supply come from? Well, number one, we supply things if the business has the resources needed to make that thing. There are things businesses would love to supply, but we don't have the technology, or we don't have the workers, or we don't have whatever we need to make it, so we don't make it. Number two, most important, we're only going to supply things that make us money. Businesses are in business to make money. They want to earn a profit. If they can't turn a profit on something, they're not going to make it. And then it's part of their plan to decide to sell it. So the Mustang, Ford doesn't make a lot of money off of Mustangs, but they plan to sell it because it provides something for their company, some ambiance. Okay? They have the resources, they can build them. It might earn a little bit of profit, but that's not the big deal. They have a plan that includes selling it. Okay? Nike, down here is people making Nikes. Nike is shifting production from China to Vietnam because we're putting taxes on stuff from China. We're not putting taxes on Vietnam. They're not bringing their factory back to the United States. They're moving their factory to Vietnam. Why? The resources exist there. They'll earn more profit in Vietnam, and that's part of their plan to sell. Okay? Just like quantity demanded, we have quantity supplied. The quantity supplied is the amount producers plan to sell during a given time period at a given price. Quantity supplied is what we as a business plan to sell. We might not actually sell it because consumers actually have to buy it, but we're planning to sell a certain quantity of stuff during a given time period at the given price. When people panic and start going to the grocery store and buying stuff, producers didn't plan enough and they didn't produce enough, and there's nothing on the shelves. During a normal time, businesses have a good idea of what they need to produce so that they can sell, and the plan matches more with reality. Okay? We have the law of supply. Businesses are in business to do what? Businesses are in business to make money. So ceteris paribus, the higher the price of a good, the greater is the quantity supplied. If gas is $5 a gallon, every gas station wants to sell a lot of gas. If gas is $2 a gallon, they're like, yeah, you can buy it. Okay? The higher the price, everything else being the same, the higher the price, the more money I make, the more I want to sell this thing. So we have a fundamental issue here. A fundamental issue. Businesses like high prices, consumers like low prices. That implies that somewhere in the middle, we might be able to find a price that makes everybody more or less happy. Okay? Theoretically, we should be able to find a price that makes everybody more or less happy. Okay? And again, why is this? Well, businesses are about profits. So let's draw a supply curve. And again, it's the same basic graph. Quantity across the x-axis, price up the y-axis. We have a point which is 110, which is in this case the supply. The businesses that make outfits are willing to supply 10 outfits when the price is $100. The supply curve slopes up. Why? Again, Businesses like high prices. Businesses like high prices, supply curve slopes up. Okay? So remember, this is about price and quantity. To get the business to produce a higher quantity, they have to be willing or available at a higher price. If the price goes down, the business is less interested in producing that product and is going to try to produce less. Remember also, just like demand, supply means the whole curve. So if we say supply changed, that means the whole curve changed. If we say quantity supplied changed, that means we changed the point we were at. So this one point right here is the quantity supplied. If we go from here to here, quantity supplied changed. If the whole curve changes, that's a change in supply.